So in this section, you are going to learn about a super, super important part of blues soloing, and really soloing on guitar in general. And these two things are bends and vibrato. Now I combine them into one because the technique is very much the same to accomplish both of them. Bends are really just bigger vibrato with one pitch, and vibrato is really just a series of smaller bends. So first, let's talk about how we execute those. The motion is basically that of a royal wave. We're coming from the twisting of the forearm, not from the fingers or the wrist specifically. And now when we start off with these, we can take a note, we'll come right out of A minor pentatonic here, and we'll play the 7th fret on the G string with our 3rd finger. And now to bend this, with this we can actually go either way. We're going to go up towards the ceiling. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this part of my 1st finger on the side of the neck as a pivot point. I'm going to use the thumb to brace too, and then I'm just going to, while fretting the note, I'm going to turn my wrist. And it feels like a turn of the wrist. It's the forearm moving, and it's kind of this motion happening while bracing. And right there, I'm doing a whole step bend. So I'm going from the note at the 7th fret to the note at the 9th fret. And this will work with any finger, any string. If I want to, say, bend the 8th fret of the B string a whole step, I fret that note, and it's the same motion there. With bends, as related to the pentatonic, the first ones that you should really start playing around with are and this is all relative to the key of A here, are the 7th fret of the G string, the 8th fret of the B string, and for that you can use your 3rd or 4th finger, and the 8th fret of the high E string. Now, when you're playing these, you'll find that at first the bends can really hurt your fingers a bit. Use the other fingers on the left hand behind whichever note is fretting on the string to create a bit more help for that finger. So then it's not one finger doing all the work. Now you'll see that I added in some vibrato there. Now, vibrato is really just a series of little bends. For the vibrato, we want to take whatever finger it is. Maybe let's start with our 1st finger here on the 5th fret of the G string. And I'm just going to use that same motion of fretting the note and then letting the forearm turn to move the string. Now, with vibrato, the best way to practice this is to go listen to some great blues players, hear their vibrato, how fast it is, how wide it is. Those are kind of the two variables with vibrato. You can have almost like a dimmer switch, any amount of speed and any amount of width on there. And then when you're practicing your vibrato, record yourself. Listen back to it. Make sure it's how you want it to sound. With bends, how I want you to practice them are to take the note you're going to bend, the fret, check it against the target pitch. So if we're bending the 7th fret of the G string and we want to bend it a whole step, that's up to that note at the 9th fret of the G string. Then bend it and check it again with the unbent note. And you want to practice these all over the neck, because with bending and vibrato, the string tension everywhere on the neck is a little different. So it's going to feel slightly different, and the muscle memory is going to change a bit depending where on the neck you are. So another really common bend we have, especially in blues, is a half-step bend between the flat 3 and the 3. So if we're in A, this would be at the 8th fret of the high E string, going from the flat 3 up to the 3, how we talked about in the last section. So this creates a really bluesy sound by going between those thirds, and we could add it to a line like this. And we can also take that and move it down and actually have it on the G string, where we're bending with our first finger at the 5th fret there, that 3rd. So when we're practicing the half-step bends, the major difference here is that when we're checking them, of course, instead of going a whole step, we're now checking with a 1 fret gap. And we can do that anywhere in the blues scale, in the kind of composite scale with some of our other notes, that we have a half-step gap between notes. So we could do that from the 2nd going up to the flat 3. We could do that the 6 going up to the flat 7. And anywhere else that you find those half steps. Really cool sound, adds a little more of a texture to the sound than just playing. When we have that bend in there, it has that little bit of a slippery approach, and it's a great sound to have. So here's a closer look at what's going on when I'm using bends as well as vibrato. Notice the movement of my forearm and how the finger is just fretting the note and letting my arm do the rest of the work. And also notice how the side of my first finger and the thumb are bracing so that I can keep those notes bent for quite a long time without having to release them. Also take note of how the fingers behind whatever note is doing the bend are helping get it there.